It's early in the morning and I'm dropping the gate. Load 'em up, boys, it's getting late. My dogs, I'm running with my dogs. I've got a black bloodhound, a mountain cur. Any kind of game, feather or fur.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. So what do we do in the beginning? Don't turn this off because there's a lot of little information I got. I got some website updates. I got some thank yous. So don't you dare hit the skip button. But Patreon patrons, you're on top of my list every time, every episode, because you're showing me that you appreciate the show so much that you give me a few dollars a month to do it. And that alone makes it worth doing. Along with that, our 2017 sponsors, Purina, Gunner Kennels, Dog Trick Collars, and Grizzly Coolers. You know I talk about them. I won't go into great detail other than the fact that, I've been feeding Purina for 30 plus years. Gunner Kennels, I've put them to the test for the last couple. Basically, since they've been on the market, it's, if you don't think enough about putting your dog in a Gunner Kennel, well, that, obviously you don't think enough of your dog. Dog Trick Collars, okay? I'm going full balls here. Besides getting to use my Pathfinder a bunch more, the accuracy and the ease of using it on my phone, it's been great. I love it. I can't see myself without it. And Grizzly Coolers, they're still keeping my beer cold from the bag of ice I bought last week. All right, it has been cold at night, again, granted, but I got the same bag of ice in there as I had last week, and my beer is still cold. In fact, I'm going to go get one in a minute. And, of course, George Hickox. I did not get to go to that seminar, but I am going to be going to Bozeman, Montana. I'm still going to do it. I'm going to be there for 3 days. I'm going to audit the class and watch everybody work with their dogs. Going to interview some folks there along with George. And while I'm out there in Bozeman, I plan on meeting with Benno Williams and doing a podcast with him. We've talked on the phone since the last one. He's looking forward to it. I want to see his new pups and see what he's doing out there in Bozeman and get some good audio and some good video, in fact, with Mr. O'Williams, as I will probably address him in the beginning just because he's older than me. Hey, just something I haven't bugged you guys about in a while. iTunes went stagnant. Every time I beg guys to get up there and girls to get up there and get on iTunes, give us a rating and review, I get a little surge. And then I check it a little bit later and I'm like, okay, apparently I got to bug you people all the time. Go to iTunes, Hunting Dog Podcast, rate and review it. Don't you dare give it a bad rating. If you do, then don't bother. But you got to get on that stuff, okay? Can't let that slack off because I'm like seeing these other shows above me in the iTunes ratings. Even though we're the only true hunting dog show out there, I don't want any of them hunting shows to get in front of me. So, well, let's say get in front of us. We need the dogs rock. High mountain hunting and backcountry whatever, and how light you can pack cut your toothbrush in half to go up and chase an elk. They shouldn't be in front of the Hunting Dog Podcast. And here's the new news, not new news, but continuing news. Our website. It's first a big thank you to Matt Giorio. Matt was one of the people who responded to my request for some help. And he is you can't tell too much, but he has been doing a ton of background work on the website. And we're starting to get some blogs on there now. And that's one of the things I wanted to get up there. People have sent me things to put up there, so you guys got something to read. When the podcast is over, you're still at your desk messing around, not doing what you're supposed to, not doing what you're getting paid for. You can go to the website and start reading some of these blogs. Ben Schramm has volunteered to write a conservation blog for us, and his first article is up. Del Whitman, I'm going to call him the Hunting Dog Podcast gunsmith. He's going to start sending me some articles, and we'll take questions and answers if you send them to me and address them on an individual basis. And Sean Wayman, the Bird Dog Doc, you guys know who he is. He just sent me a bunch of columns that he wrote for bird dog advice. Now, those are not up on the website yet, but I guarantee you they will be probably this coming week. You should be listening to this Sunday night or Monday morning. We're going to get Sean's stuff up there. And he also said if there's a specific topic, he would be glad to write something for the website for the listeners. That's very, very cool. So again, we got to thank. If I had an applause machine, I'd give Matt Giorio an applause. An applause right now. This episode that you're finally going to get to hear after I rambled on, which I tried to make it short, with Justin McGrail. Justin McGrail, you guys know he's been on the podcast. This is his 4th time on the podcast. Everybody, I never get a bad review. All I get is people, when are you going to have Justin back on? When are you going to have Justin back on? So I gathered up a bunch of questions that people have called me with, a bunch of questions that people emailed me with, and got them over to, wow, look at that, a call from California. Could be my agent. And I got them over to Justin. I went over there on Friday afternoon, and we spent a good hour talking about dogs, and plus we ran my young Bronco out there and some birds, had some fun with that. And so I hope you really enjoy this episode. Justin's always going to be a regular contributor. At least a couple times a year we get him on here. Everybody loves his advice. And if you listen to him, I mean, I've met a lot of trainers, through NAVDA, and half of NAVDA judges are trainers of one form or another. You listen to Justin, and you will learn something just from listening to the podcast. If you pay attention, take some notes, get a pen, get a paper, enjoy it. No, you know what? Get a beer, get a cigar, whatever it takes. Talk to you soon. Hey, everybody, it's Ron Bain with the Hunting Dog Podcast. I'm at my favorite training facility. I'm not even going to say where it is. It's a secret closed location with Justin McGrail. I don't want anybody coming out here and taking time away from Justin when I need him. Justin, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
I'm good, thanks.
How was hunting season? How was guiding season? Any exciting stories or updates from?
I knew you were going to ask that too. I knew you were. We talked after Montana, so we haven't talked since Arizona. Got through it okay.
Yeah.
Looking back over the season, overall it was good. Yeah. I got dealt a couple of tough days here and there, but that's going to happen when you go out that many days overall.
How many days were you there? You were like a month, right?
More than that. I left the day after Christmas and got back about February 14th, something like that.
You're still
married?
About
7. I am. So that was about a 7-week trip.
Oof.
Yeah, long one. It's a long time to be away.
I don't think I've been away for work that long.
No.
You know what I mean? Like out of town work, because I work out of town. I don't think I ever did 7 weeks.
Yeah.
You're in some hot water.
I know it. Well, I actually am very ready to get home at the end of that.
I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'd be.
As much as I love it, that's a long
like,
time.
When you see that last week corner now, you're like, I want to go home.
I'm ready to go.
That'd be it. So what I've done here is like we've done before. I've got some questions that people sent me. Questions that are probably I've added a little bit to them because, we don't get to see the dog.
Yep.
We don't get to see the person, so we do our best job on asking you the questions and getting answers.
Yeah, and we don't have them here with us
right.
to fill in the details.
When somebody calls me up after a test and said, Ron, my dog did great. It found birds. I got a 3 in pointing. I'm like, I wasn't there. I didn't see it,
Yeah.
But I can ask them a question and try to get something out of them. But
is a 3 bad?
Well, 3's good.
Okay.
It's not top score, but,
okay.
4, you'd want a 4. But
okay.
You know what? I don't know if you see this over the years. Like, it used to be everybody was like happy with a certain level of just a good usable dog, and now they want more, or they think the dog should be better, and I see a lot of that in our testing. People rerunning a dog the next day if there's a test opening. They'll go to the secretary and go, "Hey, do you have an opening on Sunday?" And like, "Yeah, actually, we had somebody pull out. Oh, I want to run the dog again." And you know what they get usually? Same score.
Same score.
But anyway, so I wrote down some questions. I actually tried to print off some emails, and my printer printed off half pages. So then I had to go back and scratch all this stuff down. So this is the first one for Justin. My dog finds grouse and woodcock really well, but only points for a second or two. How do I get him to hold? Start in the yard with other steady work, or in front of birds? I think what he was trying to say was like, do I just do yard steady kind of stuff, or do I got to do the steadiness with birds in front of the dog?
He's got to do both. But he's got to do one before the other.
So what would you, if you could see this with a crystal ball?
Sure. No, that's a pretty straightforward question. So, the dog needs to be WOW trained. And I guess I should preface the answer saying if this is a 6-month-old puppy, don't worry about it. Just keep putting him into birds.
Right.
Little quick flash points and taking the bird out.
It didn't sound like
pretty
that.
normal.
It sounded like
okay.
he went through if I remember the whole email, he kind of went through a season. My dog's finding lots of birds. He didn't say my puppy.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm assuming maybe 1 year old or 2.
Yeah.
Not a little puppy.
Right.
Yeah.
So if he feels that dog's been into a whole season's worth of birds and is finding a lot of birds and
not letting
establishing points,
Yeah.
but then taking the birds out before
Right.
you get to him,
Right.
he's probably got the makings of a pretty darn nice dog.
That's good.
Yeah, no, really. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
The rest will come. The rest is just a matter of training, and we can do that. But if a dog's a really poor bird finder, I can't do anything. So I'd take a dog like this any day of the week. But the whoa training needs to be done simply as an obedience command in what most people call yard work.
Right.
And then you need to introduce birds, and most of the time that's going to be in a more controlled situation than on grouse and woodcock. 'Cause
Well,
it's
yeah.
hard for everything to come together just
Yeah.
right. This is the perfect time of year. He's got time on his side. He can
Yeah.
map himself out a program, to be ready by August, September, and get that dog back in the woods.
When you say go into the yard, or as I say, the table, which is just my table's in my yard,
Yeah.
for steadiness, when you're saying whoa work, you're talking like dogs running around the yard, getting him just to understand whoa command
Yeah.
with no birds at all.
Whoa, correct. Whoa means stop and stand until you're released.
Right.
And so think
Under
of it,
any circumstance.
Under any circumstances. But in the beginning,
One step at a
one
time.
step at a time.
Right.
But you need to think of it like this. If your dog isn't obedient to whoa without having a nose full of bird,
Right.
you don't have a prayer around birds yet.
Yeah.
So you teach it
Yeah.
with no distractions first, just
Right.
as an obedience command,
Right.
and then gradually increase that level of distraction. And I'll do things walking around in front of the dog, still with no bird, but
Right.
kind of simulated flushing.
Right, like kicking the grass.
Picking the grass, picking up little branches,
Throw your hat.
throwing them, throw your hat. Yep, little things. And you're just proofing that dog's obedience to whoa before you bring birds into the picture.
Yeah.
And then most guys, because we're coming into that season now where starting a week from tomorrow, it's going to be released birds or nothing.
Right,
We can
no more
still
wild birds.
no more wild birds a week from tomorrow. So it's that or nothing. But those oftentimes are more beneficial for that initial steadiness work, so that you can lay a workout,
Yeah.
out like you want to get the
Right.
result you want.
Let me try to be him.
Yeah.
In the backyard. Okay, I'm working steadiness. I'm blowing the. Would you'd want to incorporate a whistle and a verbal command with that both too?
For me, whoa is just verbal.
Verbal?
I don't have a whistle.
You don't
whoa.
do a hard. It's just whoa. Whoa
Just
is whoa.
whoa,
Okay.
yeah.
So he gets this dog whoaing, playing around the yard. Can set him, in an area. Make him whoa. We can let him run around. He gets him to whoa. Mm-hmm. And we can't spend the whole hour on this guy's dog, but his first introduction to a bird. Now, and I'm kind of going by a couple things I saw over the years. Would it be one of those versions where you get this dog to whoa and you pitch out a pigeon behind yourself or something, and then still work on that dog, not chasing that bird? What would be his little baby step to a bird whoa, to whoaing on a bird?
I actually like to start with stop to flush. Like you say, a tossed bird, or you
Okay.
could pop a bird out of a launcher, all in a controlled setting.
Right.
And where you start to take some of that wild, crazy, uncontrolled chase out of the dog. And
Right.
and in the beginning, I don't expect that dog just to stop on a dime. Maybe he travels 20, 30, 40 yards, and then we can get him stopped.
Right.
Okay, and then tomorrow it's 20 yards.
Right.
And then the next
Bringing it
day
back.
it's 10. You're just gaining obedience to whoa in the presence of a bird in flight.
Right.
Before I even go into
Even though
a dog.
his original problem was not holding point long enough.
Right, but you see,
Got to get him like desensitized to it.
you need to get the level of obedience to whoa proof to include the presence of birds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of success starting with teaching a dog to stop to flush before
Stop to flush.
before I even try and teach him to be really staunch on point.
Really?
Yep.
So, and obviously it varies from dog to dog.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. You'll see a dog that just always holds a point, and you'll see the dog that's doing what his dog is doing. Mm-hmm. And then from there, so he's going to introduce a little bit of bird work. You're going to be stop to flush steadiness.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to pick. I mean, if we can try to paint a picture, stop to flush steadiness is he's already starting to chase the bird. Or, no, stop the flush. The bird taking wing.
Yeah, an unpointed bird.
Okay, there you go.
An unpointed bird. Yes,
unhandled bird.
But the dog is very much aware of the flush.
Very aware of it.
Sees it, hears it. It's in close proximity to him, but it's an unpointed bird.
And you get him to whoa through that.
Correct.
Okay.
So you're weaning him, you're getting that crazy uncontrolled chase out of him.
Right.
So that's my first step to getting control of a dog around birds.
Is that going to help later on when you're actually, if you go to wing shot and fall?
Absolutely.
You're kind of taking, it's kind of like you're taking the middle piece.
Yeah.
Because like my background is like we just had Miller out here. Mm-hmm. Okay. Dog never smelled a bird in his life and locked up on the bird. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, oh, I don't have a dog that's going to take a bird out. I mean, not right yet.
Right, he will.
He will
Sure
soon.
he will.
He will soon. But I mean, so like right now, my problem is not that. If that's the picture of my dog, introducing stop the flush, that's something I did with a more advanced dog later on back in the day.
Yeah, and you wouldn't even dream of it with your pup now. No.
But this dog has had enough bird contacts. It's like just being something. Let's call it naughty, or because it doesn't seem to be a lack of pointing. It's just a lack of being able to hold. That point
he's having a little fun with him. He's pointing a little bit, but then giving him a ride. And dogs like to chase birds. One of the biggest myths I think that's passed up is, well, just don't shoot them when they take them out, and the dog will learn that I got to hold point, of course, and. I would say a very high percentage of these pointing dogs are not overly motivated by retrieving. They don't care if you're shooting them or not. They
another question
really
later on. It's addressing that.
Yeah. Okay. So, but it sounds like this guy probably ran this dog all fall, and the dog's finding him, pointing some grouse and woodcock, and now he's just the dog's ready to be trained. He would not want to let that go on for another full season. He should be proactive in this off season and get that dog right around his birds by this coming fall. Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, this guy wrote me, I'm looking at a Brittany breeder who has a dog with tons of titles and wins and more initials after his name than an alphabet. Okay? And is this a good choice for a first-time dog owner, or should I be looking for an average breeder from just hunting lines only? That's a weird kind of question.
It kind of is, and him and
I actually talked on the phone. So
okay,
I'm not
good.
Tell you
You got some info there.
Yeah.
I get a lot of people that call me, and when we're talking about training, some people I work for want a real high level of polish on their dogs, and other people might only go out 2-3 times a year, and they just say, hey, if the dog is under reasonable control, holds point well enough for me to get a few birds, I'm a happy guy.
Right.
And everywhere in between.
Right.
But I hear people all the time, I don't need a field trial dog, I just need a hunting dog.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't mean that you can enjoy hunting with an untrained dog. You still have to train him. You're just training him to do a little differently, and maybe your standards aren't the same.
Yeah.
So most people don't know how to read those pedigrees. They see all these letters, and
ADFC,
it's
American
Russian
Field
to
Champion,
them.
Nastra. And
sure.
So it sounds like to me he's a little nervous and he listens to the podcast, and he's a little nervous, like, because I've said things like, you can breed, the best of the best of the best and have a bunch of ninnies that your average guy can't train, if he's just an average guy. I don't think I've ever said go to the parking lot at Walmart and try to find just a hunting litter. Yeah. But what would be like? Here's what I told him: if a dog can get to those level of tests, it's obviously it can be trained, which is a good sign. It obviously has the other tools, so it's got the packet. It's got what you need to work with. But it could also be from a real, without knowing all the letters, and I couldn't print that one off. It could be like a jet airplane.
Too much dog.
And he's looking for a prop plane.
The first thing in my head was, all that's well and good, and many of those dogs would suit the average bird hunter quite well.
Yeah.
But some of those competition dogs, people are getting more than they bargained for in terms of horsepower.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just more dog than they want or need or are ready to train. Right. And sometimes I tell people the better the dog is, the more training they need. And every time I say that, they look at me kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because they go, well, I thought like a great dog maybe should need less training.
Right.
And a dog that was just okay. No, the better they have, the more drive, the more desire they have, the less margin for error there is in the level of training. A half-trained, high-powered dog is a disaster a lot of times, right?
I like that. I'm gonna get a shirt with that.
Yeah, but you know, it's like the same tractor that a farmer would use for growing cash crops is not the same tractor that a guy's going to win a tractor pull with.
Right.
Okay, well, a lot of these competition dogs are the tractor pull kind of tractor, right?
Yeah.
They are just super high-powered
Right.
dogs. Now, not in every venue, and that's why it's hard to buy dogs sight unseen, or especially if you're a newcomer to the sport and don't
Right.
understand where those titles were earned.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
like
think
the
that
NAVDA program and the AKC Hunt Test program, that's very, very much a foot hunting
thing.
type
Right.
dog.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with a horseback dog.
If
but
that's what you want to do
if
with
that's
it.
what you want to do with it, or if that's what you're ready for.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I told him too, I says, you know what, if you can find, if he is, I think it was in pretty close proximity to where he lived, go there and have the guy take you out with his dogs.
Yeah.
And if you see something that looks like you like it, you might have a good, you know, it could be a good biddable cooperative dog and get all those titles.
Sure.
But it could also be a 93 octane
Yep.
dog.
Yeah.
So what about, does anybody ever ask you like a similar question? Like, there's a guy over the road, him and his two buddies, they hunt their dogs all the time. I hunted with them. They're great dogs. Should I buy one from them? The dogs have never been tested in any venue, but they hunt.
And if you've hunted with them and you enjoy hunting behind those
Probably gonna
dogs,
get a
the
good
answer
dog.
is yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Some of the very best bird dogs in this country have never been to a test or a trial.
Yeah.
They're just not owned by people who play that game.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're any better or worse.
Right.
They just never had that opportunity.
Right.
Yeah.
They got all the tools. And you know, my big thing is cooperation too. You got to, and I've always said, and you know, somebody can bitch about it or not, but I see through NAVDA a lot of dogs that pass the invitational, which is our highest level test, and I've seen pups out of them that are totally uncooperative. I mean, literally. Not saying they couldn't be reined in, not saying they couldn't be trained, but I think sometimes that person might have bought that dog out of that. I bred that VC to that VC, and you need a puppy from this dog. You might not need a puppy from that dog.
Yeah.
You know, it might, because you don't know what steps it took that guy to get that dog ready.
Only they know that.
Only they know that.
Yes. And
And-
training is not inherited by puppies.
No.
So
no
the
matter
person-
how many generations,
Right.
it's not an inherited trait.
No. So only that person that raised that dog
Yeah.
and trained it and put all those titles on him really knows what's genetic in that dog and what's was put there by a person.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, I've known some dogs firsthand that have some pretty impressive titles that are man-made dogs. You couldn't give me a puppy out of them.
You wouldn't take it if
I
you
wouldn't
needed,
take it
if you needed a dog and
if
didn't
it
have
came
it.
with a crate and a year's worth of food and a trust fund. You couldn't give me that dog. But
like
that's
that.
because I know the genetics aren't there in that dog. It just happened to be owned by someone who was super committed to that animal.
Right. Got it through all the
Got
steps.
it through just train. I'm going to make this dog.
It's like getting your kids through school by giving it too much help. It's really not that good of a student, but you got it through school.
Could be.
Could be. I didn't have any friends like that. We were all dropouts. All right, here's another one. My Weimaraner, for those of you who don't know what a Weim is, won't retrieve dead birds, but is a good hunter and usually stands over them, but sometimes walks away from them. Is this something besides force fetching that I could do that would work, i.e., retrieving games or anything like that?
I'm sure they've already tried that.
Probably.
Most likely.
Probably.
Most likely. And unless it's a dog that is brand new to a down bird or retrieving objects, you know, if a dog's had ample opportunity, he's had some birds killed over him, a decent number of birds killed over him, and say maybe it's a 2-year-old dog by now, if he still isn't doing it,
Right.
probably not.
Yeah.
You know, retrieving, yes, it can be taught, the trained retrieve and everything.
Right.
But, you know, it's by and large genetic, too.
Right.
You know,
Well, you've
it's
been,
like-
you've had setters no, not going to pick on setters, but my friend
No,
Randy, my friend Randy Herline.
I'll be the first one to help you pick on him when it comes to retrieving.
That's not a strong suit in retrieving.
Not typically.
Right, and I don't know. I guess I don't know Wimes that much. I don't see that many of them.
They typically are pretty strong in retrieving.
Pretty strong.
Yeah, compared to retrieving.
So would you take one of your setters and say, I really would like this dog to pick up the bird for me?
Mm-hmm.
Or will you say, it's a darn good bird finding machine, it's a good dog, and I'm not competing with this dog, do I need it to actually pick the bird up for me?
Depends on the individual dog, and then...
I mean, like if you see a little bit of picking up and a little bit of carrying?
For me, for my guide dogs, and just personally, I mean, they have to hunt dead.
Okay.
They have to.
So they can't just
go off and go look for more.
So if you ignore the
birds.
retrieve, you're also not going to hunt dead. More than likely.
Depends on the individual. Yeah, I'll do it with my personal dogs.
Will ya?
Yeah, on a case-by-case basis. If I have a dog that I know is just weak there, and it takes a couple seasons for me to really get a dog into hunting dead.
Yeah.
When they're young, they all are kind of, if they don't find it pretty quick, most of them want to keep hunting.
Yeah.
You know, I might put the cocker on the ground and run it with that dog. Those dogs will help a dog out, you know.
Yeah.
I'll recover more game that way, but not everybody's got those, you know, multiple dogs in the truck to pull that off with. So to answer this guy's question, if the dog's had sufficient opportunity and still isn't seeing a genetic inclination to retrieve, then it probably isn't just going to happen for him without doing that.
And that's when, and I'm going to guess this, I hope he's not mad. I think it was a he. That if you're going to try to force fetch it, and if you don't know much about it,
Get some help.
Don't do that by yourself.
No.
Because
No.
I've seen dogs from guys who are pretty good dog guys, and from their bad retrieving, or force retrieving, they've screwed up the dog's field work in blinking and I mean just tons of stuff.
Yeah.
You know.
And if
so get help for that.
Get help at a minimum. I mean, if you can't
Get a video?
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Something.
At a minimum, read some stuff, watch some stuff to get, because the hardest thing about that process is all along the way you're planting seeds for what's coming next.
When you're force breaking?
Yes. Everything you're doing there, you're building a foundation and you're planting little seeds for what you're going to do next week or whenever with the dog. Well, when you've never done it before, you don't really know what you're doing next. So you're not putting those little seeds in the right place.
Yeah.
And then the other temptation for somebody who doesn't have much experience with that is to take too big of steps. And skip and go too fast, and they don't see that they're leaving a weak link. They don't see that they're making too big a step or having too big a gap in the dog's training.
Yeah.
And by the time they see it and it becomes apparent, we've got a confused dog.
Right.
Confused
They
dogs.
didn't want to retrieve in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you correct a dog that's confused, that's always a bad thing. Yeah. Because they didn't understand, why did I just get in trouble there? And it was our fault for not clearly teaching that dog what was expected.
So either accept the fact that your dog stands by the birds most of the time.
Yeah, and just hope he stays there.
Or get help.
At a minimum,
Your dog is a good marker for you. And
Yeah.
don't drop pheasants at 80 yards and let them fly away. All right.
Yeah.
I think that's, I agree 100%. Get some help, because that's the only thing I'll say that I'm halfway good at is force fetching. I've taken my time with it. I take it slow. I try to read my different dogs. And I've shown a few people at the grounds over the years, and I'll turn around like, nah, I didn't show you. I didn't tell you to do that.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, they'll turn around, or they're trying to drag the dog's ear and down the thing before they ever finish the first step. So get help for force fetching if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I help some people through it in like a lesson kind of format where they'll come out every so often and work with me. I don't take dogs in very often to do that anymore, just to force fetch anymore. It's super time consuming.
Right.
And there's a seasonality to it. And a lot of times a year I'm super busy with other stuff. But
when you could do it, you're out guiding and hunting. Or guiding and guiding a lot,
yeah.
We got snow on the ground.
Wintertime that's a great winter project. That's a great winter project. But I'll help people, you know, in a lesson format with that, because if you put a big roadblock in front of you, a lot of times that's the end of the road for that. You know, once that dog goes sour on it, it's over.
Yeah. All right. This is the question we were talking a little bit out in the field. when I talked to Gary Lester, who won the national championship this year, and he was talking about, he starts out with, like, say 8 puppies, and he's got a guy that, well, he has them, and then he has a guy that, you know, kind of evaluates them, and then they get, and they might just say, well, let's stay with those 6, and then the next guy that starts working with them, they get it down to 4, and he's told me he has sold puppies that have won the national champion.
Sure.
So you don't, but you just go by the things you go by. And the one thing he mentioned, and then I questioned him on it, was about, if he sees a puppy that, what I call a takeout artist, you know, before it starts pointing, or even if it's pointed before, and zeroes in through the grass and comes out with a mouthful of bird. No way in the world could have seen that bird, like a quail. Comes out with that bird in his mouth. He says, that's the dog I want. That's the pup I want to work with. A pup that just crowds in or runs in after bird scent, but doesn't really know where the bird's at. He said it was kind of like that one dog he wants has got X-ray vision. Does that resonate with you?
Sure. Oh,
because it kind of threw my mind, because when I'm judging the puppies, all we end up thinking about is not the long-term dog down the road like he's thinking about. We think like, oh boy, I got to give this dog a 0.
It's a test. It's all about here and now.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, poor dog got a 0. It's not pointing.
Yeah.
And here this guy's going like, I don't worry about that at all.
Yeah.
I want that dog that can not hit a clump of grass and the bird flies up 3 feet away. I want that dog that plows his head into the grass and comes out with a bird in his mouth.
And the other difference, too, is a guy like him with those, he's putting a lot of time on wild birds, so the dog isn't going to catch those. You know what I mean? So eventually he's going to give it up. But what he was referring to
was the early puppy stuff.
Is the early puppy stuff.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned it to you when we were out there tonight. I said, there's a difference between a sensitive nose and an accurate nose.
Yeah.
And I want the dog with the accurate nose.
Right.
Yeah. He knows exactly where that bird is. Now that doesn't happen on bird number 1.
No.
Okay? No. They still need to fine-tune the use of that nose. But, and bird finding ability, you know, all dogs have a pretty good nose, relatively speaking, okay?
Off the charts good.
Right. Yeah. Now there's a lot of variance from dog to dog, and how you know, there is a whole that's just it. It's what's between their ears too.
Yeah.
Some dogs have plenty of nose, but if they find a bird, that's okay. If they don't, that's fine too.
And if it flushes because they run forward, they're happy.
They don't care. Yeah.
But yeah, he was like implying that, like, that dog that can basically see through the grass.
Yeah.
And you said he didn't use the word accurate, but that resonates.
That's exactly what
an
it
accurate
is.
nose.
Yeah.
Not just a sensitive nose.
Yeah.
It's like, I know right where it's at.
And the really sensitive nosed dog that's also coupled with maybe almost a little too cautious around birds. And a lot of grouse hunters, we all kind of want a cautious dog because that's going to be less bump birds.
Right.
But those dogs that point rough grouse from way back, okay, they're demonstrating a really sensitive nose. They pick that bird up in a lot of caution and strong pointing instinct.
Right.
But they also leave lots of doors open for that grouse to just get on out of there without us, versus that dog that learns how to really kind of sort of make them sit. No dog can do that with every grouse.
Right.
But that's that dog that's got that accurate nose. He's not pointing the general vicinity.
It's like he can get as close as he can and make less mistakes, and he makes more mistakes. Because like you said, there's grouse that get smarter and smarter.
Oh,
and if you go to hunt grouse that haven't been hunted,
the lower peninsula of Michigan, in my opinion, is some of the most challenging grouse hunting anywhere in the country.
A woodcocker even getting smart.
They run plenty, but they're still not as flighty as the grouse.
No, but I think they're playing poker with them at night or euchre or something. Yeah, they're changing. All right. Well, so what he was saying is a pretty accurate statement. I'm not saying that that's the dog you're looking for, but my first instinct was like, oh God, I don't want a puppy that's taking a bird out.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather have him smell it for a long time, point it, and then take it out.
Yeah.
And he's not even worried about that.
He's thinking down the road.
Yeah, he's thinking down the road, and I'm thinking at the moment.
He can get rid of the taking them out part.
Right.
Yeah. It's the other part. That dog's going to have less unproductive points.
Yeah.
Because he's immediately going to be able to know, smells pretty good here, but they're gone.
Right.
And he's
Yeah.
going to work his way through it and keep on hunting.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's thinking 2 years down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one thing.
Which is what everybody with a dog should do, is be thinking 2 years
That's
down
a
the
good
road.
point.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, you know what? That'll be the title of this episode.
There you go.
Think 2 years down the road with your dog.
Yeah.
Don't think about tomorrow or next fall's hunt. It's got to be better than last. Just,
Yeah.
It's a program.
It is.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
This is kind of a weird question. When is it okay to harshly correct a dog? Because this person has read so much about positive reinforcement only. That is it. Maybe the right dog you could get through every step through positive reinforcement, and I'm not sure what his definition of harshly is. Mine would be like getting kind of fed up and losing your temper, which is not training your dog.
Right.
But is there a time when it's okay to get harder on your dog, or because remember we talked one time about I can't remember who told me it, but he said back in the day we broke dogs and now we train them.
Yeah.
And we use that positive reinforcement. What's your thought on is there a point where you got to let this dog know that if he's in Catholic school and he's getting his knuckles wrapped?
Well, he used a term there in his question, which was harshly correct.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that needs to be clearly understood is there's a difference between teaching a dog something and correcting him for something that he's already been taught is not okay.
Yeah, good
So
point.
you don't correct a dog the same as you teach the dog something.
Right.
You in fact, you're not within your rights to correct a dog for something that you haven't taken the time to teach him that is not okay.
Yeah.
You can correct disobedience, but you can't correct the natural inclination of a dog. The only exception I would make for that would be chasing trash. I'm going to
Right.
correct the dog the very first. To me, that's one and the same. We're going to
Right.
get it done right
That's
here.
like
and
touching
now.
a hot stove.
Yeah,
You don't do it twice,
exactly.
or you learn.
But in terms of obedience to commands or proper manners around
You opened up
birds,
a deep hole here.
We
You're
might
making me
have.
think.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have to do your work to teach that dog, and then you have to proof your training. So it's really kind of a process. So you teach the dog the rules,
Right.
and then you proof that's the
You see if
training.
he is remembering the rules.
Right, and then you have to proof your training in multiple places, multiple situations,
Not just
adding
your
people,
backyard.
other dogs. You're just proofing that training because there's all kinds of dogs that are steady on a pigeon in the backyard, but you go hunt and the wheels come off.
Yeah.
They haven't proofed their training.
Right.
They're off to a fine start, but they
Right.
still got a little bit to go. And then only after you've taken the time to proof your initial training, if you have a dog that is repeatedly being defiant,
Right.
you're going to have to correct the dog for that.
Right.
Now, what is harsh is going to depend on the individual of the dog.
Yeah.
It's just like a teenager. I would imagine that if he keeps breaking the rules, it's an escalating increments of discipline for that kid until he accepts that I got to play by mom and dad's rules as long as I'm coming home under this roof.
Right.
Same thing with a
You're
dog.
making me think about every kid back in the day just got a belt to them. They might not even have been guilty, and that's what I think we're guilty of training dogs sometimes. Is we give them a whooping and they don't know what they got a whooping for.
Yeah, well, they have
know,
to know.
Because you're not they haven't even learned what the rules were yet.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of a tough one. But what you said, I mean that makes sense. I mean, super sense.
But what's really proof of, I think, because you mentioned, guys say we used to break dogs and now we train them. I think a lot of that is thanks in no small part to dog breeders in the last 100 years or whatever.
Yeah.
Is we have dogs that are more trainable now. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
And so if you take the time to train them and reinforce your training and proof that training, it's amazing. You don't really have to harshly correct. And with guys who are good with e-collar conditioning now, harshly correct might be the occasional nick on an e-collar. There you go. You just corrected it.
Yeah.
You didn't even say a word.
And
You've done your work.
My head was thinking like the
old school flushing whip guy.
Flushing whip.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And not to say that that's never worked on a dog, but I don't know that it's ever worked on a dog, you know.
And that's just super old school.
Yeah.
And yeah, those guys still exist somewhere, but
You ever meet one?
I've met a couple, but they usually live pretty well south of here. No offense to my friends down there, but that's just tradition, right? That's how they were taught from their daddy.
Right. That's how you train a dog.
You spurred your horse, you rode him down, you caught him, and you let him know that's not okay.
Right. You might not have taught him anything, but you felt better about getting mad at him.
I don't know. Yeah.
All right. Well, we won't cut down to which dogs can take 2x4 treatment or not. We'll leave that one out. All right. Do I have to teach my lab blind retrieves to become a good duck dog? Can he learn to search like the versatile dogs in NAVDA? Now, I know you don't do NAVDA, but you know kind of what our duck search is. Like, we can take, we'll fill the pond with game, and the dog just learns to go out on your command to fetch or dead.
Yeah.
And start searching. We don't have to, I've seen people who will teach hand commands, but just this dog just learns that if he goes out, he's going to find game, even though he didn't see it drop. And I guess what he's wondering, from what I could gather, is can he hunt his lab, and will his lab learn to search like my dog or the versatile dogs do, or does the lab need to have that the old baseball and the blinds and the over? Or,
Well,
I know you don't do a lot of lab
water
work.
Well, I do a lot of lab upland work.
Upland work, right.
And so I view that scenario just as an extension of that. And labs are super smart and super trainable. So if he's got a lab that's got, any kind of drive and gaminess to him and want to find game, he'll figure that out pretty quick.
Right.
Now, my guess is he's still going to find himself in some situations where it would be beneficial for him to be able to handle that dog at least somewhat. He doesn't have to take his dog to the degree that the trial retriever pros take their dog.
Well, I think he might have been like, it almost feels like he might have watched some DVD, watched somebody do this unbelievable, and like, do I need to do that?
I do all of that?
My buddy's got a wire hair that tears up the swamp and finds all the dead birds.
And so if he developed that water search, which I think would come pretty easily and naturally to the lab, if he has developed an upland search, especially, that's going to transfer. Yeah, that dog's just learning.
Because if the dog only marked with his eyes retrieves, and never actually searched, and never searched a field, that would be an obstacle.
It would be. So I think that development, the use of his nose on land, would benefit the water search for that. But I think the guy probably would be doing himself a favor, at least to do a little bit of basic handling, so he could send his dog left, right, or back a little bit. Just so that if the dog's way off the mark, at least you can give him a little help.
Right. Or at least teach him the back command to just keep going.
Going back a little further.
So, I mean, can he get that off a DVD? Is that is that as, I shouldn't say this, but is teaching the retriever what they used to call, the baseball, and the backs and overs? I know we can't compare it. If we had a good versatile dog and a good retriever, like just good working with dogs, what would be easier? Teaching that upland dog to be steady to wing, shot, and fall, or teaching that lab to do overs, backs, and crosses?
I don't think that's a fair comparison.
Come on!
No, it's not.
It's not.
No,
Okay.
those are completely
I just think that's what he's
different.
trying to think. Like, one, he might be able to get away with it without doing something. But
because you can take that blind retrieve training and literally make a multi-year project out of that.
Really?
I mean, you can take it to that level.
Right.
Sure, if you really want to do that.
Right.
It doesn't sound to me like this guy needs to do that,
No.
and it's really just the competition dogs that do. So he needs to keep how is this going to benefit me when I'm really hunting?
Right. So what would be, without getting into a dissertation on it, could he get something off the internet? Could he get something from a book?
Oh,
and
there's
just get
tons of stuff written on basic blind
blind retrieving, and just follow some of that.
Follow that stuff, and then he can do very much the way the NAVDA guys do, develop their water search for a crippled bird in the water environment, and then kind of meld the two together a little bit.
Teach that, and that handling's, like you said, the handling's always taught on the ground first.
Sure.
You couldn't teach it to a dog in the water.
Yeah.
Have to start on the ground, so maybe he needs to get out in the field and do that. All right. All right. I hope you like that answer. All right. This guy just wrote the other night. Yeah. Lives in North Dakota. I thought he was looking for a dog, but he says he's either a new dog owner or getting his dog soon. Okay. Will too many... Oh, I'm going to back it up because it was more to the email. He had listened to the podcast I did with you talking about getting the dog out on these spring birds with no shooting, just getting them out on contacts.
Mm-hmm. Or just blank guns.
Or blank gun.
Yeah.
And then I did one with Nick Moe, and he was saying the same thing. He does a lot of off-season, bird hunting with no gun. Mm-hmm. And so this guy, he lives in North Dakota. He's got great pheasants in his area. Will too many wild bird contacts with my dog without ever shooting them in the off-season. Well, and if he's got a new dog, like a young dog, young enough to probably run a field, but doesn't have a season behind it. Mm-hmm. Will that be okay for the dog, or is that bad, or is it good, or he's thinking does the bird need to be shot to keep the dog's interest up?
Yeah. No.
No,
not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Okay.
No. You can't pour too many wild birds to a dog.
So you're saying Helen Keller could own a bird dog? Never kill a bird.
Yeah. No. There are dogs.
The dog would be happy.
Yeah.
Okay.
There may be occasions, depending on the training regimen the dog was going through, that it would be beneficial to shoot a few birds for the dog, but that is not the reason they hunt. And you could go prolonged periods of time and shoot no game over dogs, and they're still going to go out there and work with you.
Right. They're not going to quit.
They're not going to quit, and if they did, it's because they're not much of a dog.
Right.
Move on, or just
and so
chalk it up to
especially
what
if
it
we're
is.
talking about the few months where you could run off season. If your dog's finding birds, not to worry at all about not pulling trigger on them.
And that's the dog's reward, finding game.
Right.
They just love to go out there and do it.
I always thought, I shouldn't say thought, but I always thought it was so important that they had the bird.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that they've hunt and they...
Yeah, they just love to go do it.
Yeah.
And they learn the game you play with them. And so those birds flying off, and that becomes normal to them, and they're just as happy to go do that. They'd rather do
chase
that
the cat up a tree
at home, whatever.
They don't get tired of chasing the cat up a tree.
No, and you don't have to go out there and shoot it for them to want to chase a cat up a tree.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. I like the analogy.
Yeah.
Right, I'm good. All right. When retrieving bumpers, how do I get my dog to not parade around me? Mm-hmm. And I know exactly what he's talking about. But with one of my dogs, good retriever, but when I start making him sit and be a little steady for the things, then he likes to either stop, maybe chew on a bumper, or. But I think what he's saying is his dog just seems to always grab that bumper and just kind of loop around him.
Yeah, I see it all the time, and I think dogs. So this dog, obviously, for starters, has
Retrieves.
he's got some pretty strong retrieving instinct.
Yeah.
The instinct to go out, pick up something, and hold and carry it is really strong in this dog.
Right.
It's pretty common for them to come to us with a little bit of possessiveness, right from day one. And
Right.
I feel like a lot of times that gets started even when they're still with their litter mates. One of the pups will get a hold of something, and it's this big old game of keep away. This pup's running around trying to keep it from all the other puppies.
And then he'll try to wake him up and do it again.
Yeah, so now sometimes a new dog owner will actually make it worse, and that's by too much retrieving and too uncontrolled an environment. Mm-hmm. And so they're throwing all this stuff for a dog with no little puppy check cord on there or out in the field, and that's where the dog begins the habit of parading around with things, or laying down and chewing on the bumper a little bit. Or it could be from doing it too long until the puppy is bored with it. He didn't need to sit out there and try it for 45 minutes.
Right.
It should have been about 5 minutes
Less
if
is
it's a
more.
little puppy.
Yeah.
You're just trying to establish good behavior patterns and habits. So if he's already to this point that he's got this parading thing going, but the dog will still hold and carry that,
Right.
it's really pretty simple to shape that into a nice retrieve. And that is an absolute lesson in come when called. I don't care if you have something in your mouth or
You don't
not.
have to build up a hallway or nothing.
No, he's beyond the hallway. He's past that.
He's out in the yard.
So, but he needs to go back and proof his come when called training. Now, I'm sure this dog already knows without the bumper, right?
Yeah,
exactly. Okay. So, I'm sure this dog already knows what come when called means. But when he's got that bumper in his mouth, he's been worked in an uncontrolled enough environment that it's fun, and eventually, he gets to go chase that and get it again. But the handler, the trainer, has put himself in a situation where he can't reinforce come in that.
Right.
And good old check cord would have prevented that in the beginning. You can back it up. But yes, you go back, you proof your come when called with no bumpers, no retrieving.
Right.
Then add that into the mix and be ready. When you bring those bumpers back into the mix, I guarantee you that dog's going to start wanting to parade with them again.
Right.
You work him through it.
Right.
I have a young setter right now that you mentioned how crappy setters are typically at retrieving.
I mentioned that they have a little problem.
You're talking to a guy who owns some setters, and you're not far off. It's about 1 out of 3 in the dogs that I end up buying puppies from are pretty good natural retrievers. That's just the way it is. I know that going into it.
Yeah.
So that's life.
It's like buying an old Dodge.
You're not going to get it all in the same dog.
Right.
So I know that going into it. Well, anyway, I have a young one right now that I could see as a puppy. This dog is just crazy about picking up and carrying stuff.
Yeah.
And I saw that at about between 12 and 16 weeks, between 3 and 4 months old.
How old was he when you got him?
8.
8. So you had a few weeks of just...
Yeah, and just
normal
little puppy walks, crate training, housebreaking, getting used to, rides. No, I didn't purposely do any retrieving with that
just, you
dog.
didn't even see him picking up stuff early.
No, and I don't even remember what it was when I saw this pup really likes to carry stuff around. So then I did formally do a little bit of stuff just with a little canvas dummy on a check cord, and man, this pup would go out and pick that up and carry it around as long as you would let her. And
Just make it circle.
Oh, yeah. I went,
now,
okay.
did you have him on a check? Her on a check?
I did, and she did not want to bring it to me. She wanted to run around with it like crazy because she's a young setter, and coming to me is boring. So, so from that day on, when I saw that, I went, "That's it. I'm not going to do any more retrieving until I have a bulletproof come when called."
Okay.
So, and it worked like a champ. That dog's now about 22 months old. I didn't reintroduce retrieving until I had an absolute bulletproof come when called, and the dog was collar conditioned to reinforce that off leash in the field.
Yeah.
And then I brought retrieving back into the mix. And
let me ask you, had that dog had some at that point? The dog had some bird contacts before, in between this time.
A little bit, yeah. I didn't kill a lot of them over her.
Right.
And she had a small handful of birds shot over her that first.
So it wasn't like she had a hunting season of parading with dead birds or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
But, so I had that collar conditioning and that come when called level of training to a high degree in place before I brought the retrieving back in. And then I put the two together.
Yeah.
This dog never learned any other way. She comes back with him as fast as she goes out to him. And that's because, and now this is one thing a lot of good dog people are very, very good at that a lot of newcomers, it's not possible for them to be that good at it yet, but it's keeping a dog out of a situation where they're only going to learn bad habits.
Yeah.
So I kept that dog shielded. That was my job as her quote-unquote trainer.
You shielded that dog.
I shielded that dog from an environment that she was going to learn something bad. And then I waited until I had my training, foundation pieces in place. Okay, now I'm in a position to address this to where I can get the outcome that I want.
So you introduced the bumpers that much longer? I mean, like when you had all that other...
As soon as I saw her as a puppy wanting to do it, she never saw another one.
Never another one.
Never another one. Why?
See, that's the temptation all of us, rest of us have. You know it.
Yeah, I know, because that's like the easiest thing to do when you get home from work. Is I'm gonna go out in the backyard and throw something for this dog.
And keep calling it while it makes a circle.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
God, that takes some.
It is, but I got enough other stuff to do, so I understand the guy
It's
with
not your
a
one
dog,
Yeah, it's
right?
not your one dog.
Yeah, so that I can totally understand the guy with a dog, and he just can't help himself. Yeah. And along the way, now every now and then you latch onto a puppy that wants to bring that to you more than anything in the world, and consider yourself lucky if you do. They do exist, and it's nice when you get one, but don't count on it.
Right.
But this guy will have a really good retriever once he gets
long
that.
as he's holding that long.
Yeah, the dog wants to do it. He's just got a little bit of that's just a habit.
Yeah.
And he's going to have to train him out of that habit.
Fun.
It's kind of fun for the dog, and it works for him. But that's not a big issue to solve.
Right.
No.
But like you said, the issue for most guys who are training at home is to know that path that you took.
Yeah.
Not to work on that retrieving now. No. Work on come when called.
Go do something. Yeah.
Get rid of the bumpers. Don't even get that locked down 100%. And what'd you call it too? When you get that, you get it trained and then you get it proofed.
Proofed.
When you get it proofed. And proofed means you're able to do it at your facility or you're at a ballpark or your friend's house. You got to, when you proof a dog, it should do the same behavior wherever you take it.
Yes,
and then you know
a
it's
variety of places, and with the introduction of some distractions around. Yep, another dog, and a strange person that happens to be training with you that day. So you have to strengthen that training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Proof it. Okay.
Proof it.
I got it. I love that. That was a good one. I think I might be able to answer this one, but we're going to Justin because you're the trainer. Dog started blinking planted birds. Besides probably doing too many pigeons, so he kind of is like somebody probably told him he's just doing too many. What should I do next? Like, so I'm trying to paint this. If I may be wrong, and he'll have to write me back. I started doing drills. Probably maybe started doing a little bit too much steadiness thing or something the dog didn't like. So the dog decided, like, you know what, if I didn't smell it, we don't have to deal with what happens with the bird. Yeah. So he's truly blinking a bird, avoiding bird contact.
Yeah, we should be real clear on that because a lot of people will use different terms to mean different things.
For blinking.
Right. So just so everybody's on the same page. Blinking is intentional avoidance of a bird that the dog has smelled and he knows it's there.
Right.
And somewhere along the line, he's had a bad association with him finding a bird, and he purposely pretends like that bird's not there.
And it probably wasn't because he stepped on a mousetrap on his first bird.
Nope. So anyway, go ahead.
Blinking is purposely
just
avoiding.
So everybody knows what we're talking about here.
Sometimes it's like bumping gets another translation.
Yeah, some people use different words to describe different things. So the dog's
blinking birds, and now let's say he's like, Justin, what do I do? My dog's blinking birds that I've been planning. Mm-hmm. And whether you quiz him and say, "Whoa, did you try steadying him up too fast before you?" I've seen that, where you try to get a little more advanced work done, and the dog's like, I don't like this advanced work yet. I'm not ready for it, and I'm just not going to find a bird for you. Yeah. Even though we know when they, they blink them. It's hard to tell sometimes. But what do you think this guy could do with a dog that starts blinking?
So since we're in early April now, do you know where he lives?
I don't.
No? Okay. Most likely, unless he's been training all through the winter, probably made this problem last summer, fall. Maybe not.
And it could be just when he's at a training day, too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've seen dogs act totally different when it's structured than they act in hunting field.
Yeah, the dog's got his wires crossed. You think about it, and you mentioned it when we were out with your puppy today. First two birds that dog's ever seen in his life, right?
Yeah.
He pointed, and when them birds came up out of the grass in front of him, he just couldn't contain himself.
Right.
He's tearing. So you think about, this is the polar opposite of what a bird dog should do when he's around a bird.
Yeah, and I wish you'd have told me if the dog was pointing good. And I'm kind of assuming that he didn't write that. He didn't say my dog was pointing great, and then I was doing too many pigeons. Yeah. So I guess we don't know if this dog ever pointed really good. But let's assume this young dog was pointing and he just overdid something or something.
Yeah, and this almost goes back to actually, I think it was the first question the guy had, about the dog that's not holding his grouse and woodcock and going in on him, and how we talked about, you got to stair step your way up to it. You got to build your woe foundation, and then you got to bring birds back into it. The times that I've seen this behavior in a dog is when that whoa foundation is not there, and the dog was in some fashion corrected around birds
It connects that.
and did not understand anything beyond I found a bird and it was bad for me.
Right.
So there was no connection between what the person was setting out to teach
Right.
and what actually happened in that workout.
Could that be something as simple as, and there's nothing simple, but there's simple mistakes. Mm-hmm. There's no simple training, apparently. There's a foundation to be built under every category. But let's say Die's a little mad at his dog. He hadn't, dog's running by, and at the millisecond his dog made scent on a bird, this guy took it as this dog is running away and not listening to him because he's calling him in. So he hits him with the collar, but this dog just smelled a bird.
It could be, but that's bad luck, and I'm sure that has happened to somebody out there.
That might not just sour the dog.
Nah,
completely.
this whole thing stinks of pigeons and launchers and an attempt at steadiness. Now, I could be completely
Right.
wrong, but
Right.
that's what this question has the whole vibe of to
Right.
me.
If you had to be Columbo.
If I had to
reach
be
in
a
your pockets
detective,
for an answer.
it was a guy who was going to have, he was going to go out and steady this dog. And maybe this is not at all the case, and
Right.
it was just a bad luck, poorly timed correction
Right.
that the dog misunderstood. But that's usually not the case because in order for it to get so bad, the correction either has to be insanely severe for it to be a one-time thing.
Right.
This usually happens when somebody does something over and over and over,
Yeah.
and then the dog just
Just
goes,
says,
"This is not good. I don't want anything to do
Right.
with this."
And
So
I know how to get away from it.
yeah. So we're finally getting around to something that resembles an answer. What do I do?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Well, the first thing I would do is this guy is scratch the pigeons and scratch the launchers. So what he has going for him is he doesn't have to hunt pigeons in the fall. Okay.
Good.
The next thing I do with this guy is I'd go fishing for a while and quit trying to train my dog. And I take that dog fishing with me and I ride him around in my truck. And I find something else to do with my dog other than drill him on pigeon. This is a pointing dog, right? Obviously, I'm assuming. Okay, well, I assume that, but right. So don't worry about the steadiness because right now he's in a situation where he doesn't have a bird dog.
Right.
So you're going to worry about that once you get this problem fixed.
Right.
Okay, so he's got to get this dog sweetened back up on birds.
Right.
Step number one. So whatever happened to cause this, and he may not even be able to put his finger on it.
Right.
Okay, wherever he's doing this work, don't ever go back. If it's on pigeons and launchers, you're done with pigeons and launchers because he
Right.
can't do anything that's going to trigger that negative, in that
Right.
dog's brain. So he's got to go to a different place and he's got to start fresh.
Yeah.
Now, I've even seen dogs that even though you went to a new place and you went to a game bird,
Yeah.
there was still something where they recognized this is a setup. Right? Now, I don't know if this dog got any real world hunting yet.
Right.
But honestly, if this dog was at least staying with me reasonably in the field, right? I had a decent level of control. I didn't have some outlaw runoff.
Right.
And he was thoroughly acclimated to the gun.
Yeah.
I'd just go out and start whacking some birds for this dog. Now, we talked about earlier how there's a lot of dogs you can work and work and work and not shoot birds over, and that's
Right.
fine, doesn't bother them. Yeah, well, none of them are doing this. This is a dog where I think that's important.
Right.
Go out and kill him some birds.
Right.
And let him realize you're not going to get in trouble when you find a bird.
Right.
So this guy needs to back way up because if he doesn't, right now he doesn't have a dog that in my opinion is a
Can hunt,
huntable
yeah,
dog.
if he's gonna blink a bird.
If that dog is doing the very opposite of what a dog's supposed to be
Right.
out there to do,
Yeah.
he needs to take a step back and reevaluate what he's doing and why. And get that dog sweetened back up on birds. If if he can get a source of some good pen-raised game birds that he can legally shoot over the dog in the off season, and in the beginning,
Would you just walk him with a bird bag and?
no, I'd want it to be as natural as I could. I'd have them kind of an area pre-seeded with them, and I'd let those birds sit out there for a half hour, 45 minutes
Right.
before I came back through with the dog. No commands in the beginning.
No commands, no gun, no
No,
nothing.
just
let
see
him-
what he does. Yeah, see
Yeah.
if you can get him sweetened back up on birds.
Right.
And if that doesn't do it, not out of the realm of possibility that the damage is done. If this dog does this on other places
Right.
with game birds
Right.
and also wild birds,
Yeah.
it might be done.
Right, and we don't. This is another one, like we said in the beginning. If you can't see the dog, it's
Yeah.
so hard to answer questions. But
Yeah.
I think it's.
I feel bad for the guy because something happened. That dog's got his wires crossed, but
It almost sounds like. Will gun-shy dogs blink birds too?
absolutely. In fact,
I mean, wouldn't that be like
most times.
a gun-shy dog is like going, oh, I know it comes after I smell the bird, that big boom.
I would say over half the time that I see a dog blink birds,
It's
it's
also-
because he's gun shy.
Oh, okay.
He was made gun shy on birds, and he knows when that thing
His first
flies.
association with that noise that bothered him and that bird scent,
Yes,
it just got it all topsy-turvy.
So this guy very well could have
And
that
maybe- yeah.
going, but if he's doing launchers and pigeons, I don't know if he's shooting them or not. But
Yeah.
that's the first thing he needs to rule out is a gun problem.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it doesn't take many times of that before that dog goes, if this bird flies, that bad noise is going to happen.
Look how long it
So
took
how-
Frankie to get over, or Oscar to get over
Yeah,
all
so
that stuff.
so how can I make that gun not go off?
Yeah.
Just lead my buddy away from that dog, that bird, because then he won't shoot.
We don't find birds, we
So-
don't hear boom.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that.
Well, that's
he
what
needs
it
to
makes-
rule that out first.
You got to rule that out.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
if he's confident the dog doesn't have a gun problem, go kill some birds over him. No pressure. Don't worry about steadiness. In fact, the best thing he could see initially
It's crazy.
is that dog going right in there
Right.
after them birds.
And then don't go right back to training again either.
no,
right?
no,
As long as
exactly.
you didn't lose the bird love, you could still do some more fishing this summer with them. and
Yeah, it's
Just take it slow.
if this were a 7-year-old dog, this guy wouldn't have reached out to you with a
Right.
question, right?
Right.
So this is probably a young dog.
I'm guessing,
I'm
yeah.
guessing too.
Yeah.
And or he would have crossed this bridge long ago. And so you got to remember, he's got, like we talked about earlier, he's got like a 2-year plan in play here.
Right.
So don't get in such a hurry. You
Right.
know,
You're not going to get them ready this October.
You're gonna get him ready. Maybe.
Maybe, but don't make that
Don't
your
worry
goal.
about it. Right.
Make your goal like, all right, down the road, I'm gonna get this done.
Yeah,
Take it slow.
it's good to have goals for our dogs. I do. You know, with every dog I raise, I have goals, but I'm also bending those.
Keep it all in your head, or do you write
I
it
do.
down?
No, I keep it all in my head, but I'm also bending those to the dog's timetable.
Right.
Because they're not always on our timetable. You know, I got an 18-month-old. I'm still waiting to see point a bird. Now,
What?
Yeah, I knew you would have that reaction, and I'll tell you why I bring that up.
Yeah.
I've got 3 young dogs right now. Okay, I've got an 8-month-old, an 18-month-old, and that
And a 20-some-month.
22 months old, 21, something
Okay.
like that. Right. 2 of them are. I can already tell you. Well, I'm already guiding over the 20-month-old. Mm-hmm. This 8.
That's the one you held back from. You saw early retrieving.
Yeah.
And then you waited till you had all.
Yeah,
your-
and that was just a good example, I thought, of how to control the environment.
Yeah.
And that's what I want people thinking of when they're training their dogs this summer is control that environment to get the result you want.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, right now, it's who knows, but I'm all starry-eyed over this 8-month-old. Man, I see some stuff out of this pup that I'm like, whew, I'd love to hit fast
That's the one you
forward
just
about
went down
2
south and got?
years. I got that
Yeah.
pup in November.
Yeah.
This 18-month-old, everything else is there. The dog's trained. She'll do anything I want. She'll do this. But she still is like, she holds point shorter than your puppy did on its first birds today that we took out earlier. Yeah. Now, if you knew this dog's mom, this dog's dad, and the litter mates, you go,
That's impossible.
that's impossible. Well, I got the proof right back here in my kennels if you want to go run her. And I don't have an explanation for it, okay?
Right.
Now, I'm not going to make a big issue about it, but at some point, I got to make a decision.
Right.
Now, my program is a little different than some because I have the ability to just keep putting puppies into wild game, and most often they'll start to get pretty staunch on point naturally, and they'll show me when they're ready to steady. Mm-hmm. I didn't get that with this one. And I've done nothing different with this dog than any other.
And the dogs that you typically get, I'm not saying they've all been related, but you know all these dogs.
I own her sire.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that's a big surprise.
It was a shock
because,
to me.
I mean,
Yeah.
almost as a rule, that's one thing you don't normally have to worry about with a setter, right?
No, especially out of
That
this
age,
kind
that
of
line,
blood.
that age, that blood.
Those dogs typically
That's the last thing you expect.
they typically just point birds. And
You're like, yep, yeah, we got that part.
Well, and I keep stringing myself along here, going, okay, well, it's going to happen soon. It'll happen soon. It'll happen soon.
Yeah.
And somebody asked me just a couple of weeks ago, how old is she now? And I had to admit to myself, this dog's a year and a half old, and she's still not where she should.
So when you say not pointing, it's pointing, but for a very short period of time.
Or not at all.
Or even not at all. Even.
Well, if she's seen a bird in the last 10, 15 minutes, then she doesn't think she should point the next one.
Oh, you got your hands full.
Because she's all, she's all jacked up from that bird contact. Now, is there any way that dog will remain like that for the rest of her life? No way. I don't see that happening.
Right.
I don't. Can I have her this rock solid, staunch pointing dog in the next 30 days?
No.
No way.
No.
No way. So that's an example of I got to be on her calendar.
Right.
But
that's what you mean. Like you've got programs now. That dog's got its own little program in your head, like
it does, but that program might involve finding her another home because because at some point I gotta make some decisions here. Unfortunately, I can't make them all. I can't make all my decisions with my heart. I love, and that's the shame of it too. This dog never barks. She's a peach to have around the kennel. She's got the sweetest temperament. Hunt's great. Everything else is great. But her hole right now and her development, that's a pretty big one for a pointing dog, right? Yeah.
You can handle that retrieving hole.
Sure. Yeah, I can live with that, and I can fix
not
that.
The lack of
and
pointing
so
or the length thereof.
Yeah. So, but that's an example of not being on.
And let's turn this into like the last question because it's funny when you hear you.
Sure.
You've been training for 20-some years.
26. This is my 27th summer.
And you would think like, well, that's not going to happen to Justin.
It can happen to anybody.
He fixed that dog. He'd fix that dog before it was a year old.
That's almost why I brought it up tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
if I had that dog, I'm trying to think like, all right, would I just work on woeing it?
This dog is totally woe broke. So I can stop her from a dead run in the field and she will skid to a stop, right?
So, but when she makes bird contact, if you use a woe command?
No, I haven't tried that yet.
Would you think?
Not the first several times. But see, that's where if I have to resort to that dog is going to find another home because you should never have to take any pointing breed and woe them into a point when they smell a bird. It should be mandatory spay or neuter if you got to do that.
You know something? That's funny that you said that because when I had, I think it was, I'm going to get the name wrong. His first name's Robin. He's a English lab guy. He was working in Florida at a big kennel. And what griped the dickens out of him was that people are breeding Labradors that don't retrieve.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
He says, well, they force break him and they get him to pass all their tests, but the dog had no natural retrieving. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of what you're kind of saying.
Yeah, if I have to do that.
If I have to make this dog hold a point, it's not a pointing dog.
It doesn't. No, exactly. And it doesn't need to be, the advanced steadiness is where I'm going to need that woe training.
But
if I don't have a dog...
Just approaching steady, your approach, your physical approach.
If I don't have a dog that is willing to stop and point birds when it smells them and knows they're right there in front of them, then I don't have a dog I can trust when they're over the hill on me.
You almost got a flushing dog.
I need a dog that needs to want to point birds, right? Not just when I'm there to tell them they have to stop.
You'd be fine if you came around a corner, she'd been on point for a while, and you getting close, and then she starts going.
Sure.
You'd be fine with that.
Well, that's just a matter of training steadiness.
That's training steadiness.
Right.
But you're seeing this with your eyes just like out in front of you, no interjection from you, and the dog just doing this over and over.
Yeah.
Poor Justin.
But see, normally a lot of puppies will go through a little bit of that, and then they kind of almost self-correct, and their pointing typically should just be getting better and better as they get a little bit older. Yeah.
So it even happens to Justin McGrail.
And she's exceptionally well bred. Yeah. I mean, if you knew setter pedigrees, if you knew setter pedigrees and I laid it in front of you, you'd go, oh my goodness, how can that be? Well, it happens.
Yeah.
It does. Genetics are not an exact science, and like I said, I don't think this dog will stay like this the rest of their life. The question is, how long am I willing to wait?
Right.
You know.
You can't wait till half of its life is over.
No, exactly.
You
can't.
use your dogs for
and I need to free up.
and
Then
work
I need to free up that spot for the next dog if it's not in the cards with this dog.
Right.
Yeah. So it can happen even out of the best litters. It's not. They're not computers that come to us programmed.
Yeah, they're not stamped out by a punch press.
No.
They're punched out by Mother Nature.
Every now and then I just scratch my head and I go,
Well, it's just
I don't
like
understand.
people. You meet a big family of kids, and you got one kid that's a mass murderer, and the other one's a pastor.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get some of them, and they're all like college professionals.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not. I think that's a little bit of luck.
Could be.
I think. You come from a long line of professors or dog trainers?
My parents were both way smarter than me, so I don't know what happened. I got a knack with the dogs, I suppose.
You answered the ad for cleaning kennels. That's what happened.
That's you know what? You're pretty much right on the mark.
Justin, I appreciate it always. Everybody loves. I get emails when you having Justin on again. I love the training ones the best. I'm like, wait a minute, they're not the best, but people love them.
Good.
And people always love your demeanor.
Yeah.
And you're well known around the area too. You know, you've run into some people that actually heard the podcast that didn't know you.
Yeah.
I run into more people they're like, oh, I didn't have Justin. He's a great guy. I know him. So you must have quite the reputation.
It's a surprisingly small world. Everybody kind of knows everybody, and I mean to one extent or another. So yeah. I've been around a long time. It's hard for me to believe.
You don't got hardly any gray in your whiskers, though. That's not too bad.
I got a couple there.
I see them. I'm seeing them. With the sun going down, it's a little reflective. All right, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks for listening, everybody. And thank you to our sponsors, Purina, Gunner Kennels, Dog Collars, and Grizzly Coolers. And a little other update. In the next, maybe 2 weeks, I'm going to guess. Might be wrong, but maybe sooner, maybe a little later. We're going to have an online store on the website. I've got the first box load of Hunting Dog Podcast T-shirts sitting right across the counter from me, and we're going to offer those up to folks. If you don't want to do Patreon and support the podcast that way, you can certainly help support the podcast by buying a T-shirt. And eventually we'll have. I've got some more ideas, some more things coming, but I had a lot of people ask about how come we don't have T-shirts. So there's literally a box of about 100 of them over here, and as soon as that comes up online, you'll be able to purchase them right online. I forget what system we're going to use, but anyway, it'll be simple, it'll be easy, and you can show your love for the podcast by wearing a Hunting Dog Podcast T-shirt. Talk to you soon. Have a good week.